talk about some of Michigan's transfers coming in, and this also plays into it as well. You need, the money cannon, so to speak, to keep that going year after year. But Michigan bringing in 9 now after Josh Wallace commits last week. This is the most probably ever that they've brought in a single offseason. Certainly the most under Jim Harbaugh. And I think a lot of them are going to play some pretty big roles. So I'm writing an article this week, and I don't have totally the rankings, but, ranking the top impact transfers on this team. And we did this a few months ago when they only had, just the first several that were committed. And I had Ladarius Henderson on there as number 1. That was before we, knew that he wasn't necessarily with the team during the spring, that we wouldn't know necessarily where things stand with him. So I'll throw it to you guys first. But who's the one transfer on this team that's going to make the biggest impact? And I'll put it in this context too. Ernest Hausmann, who we were talking about before we went hit record here as well. He is the top ranked guy on Three's transfer portal rankings among the Michigan commits or newcomers. Number 21 overall, top rated linebacker. I don't think I'd put him as a top impact guy because of the depth at that position. So, you could go a little bit differently with it there, just at positional need and things like that. But who do you think is going to make the biggest impact this fall among those 9 guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, I think it's one of two. I think it's going to be Drake Nugent at center or Ladarius Henderson. And to me, they're both equally huge because, number one, you've got to replace Olu Oluwatimi, who was your Remington Award winner, right? And I think Drake Nugent is Pro Football Focus's number 1 returning center in college football, if I'm not mistaken, Clay.
Mm-hmm.
Still, you know what? It sounds like he's going to be able to step right in and do everything you ask, but it's not a given. We've seen guys come in with high expectations before and not live up to them. He was banged up in the spring, but now he's better. And I expect a big season from him. It was funny talking to Trevor Keegan for that Football Preview magazine. He said, with Henderson and with Nugent, he said he went out with them that night, and he said it was just like going out with old friends, guys that had been there forever. And he said the first night we hit it off. So that's critical, that they're getting guys that fit the culture and the mold of what they're looking for. But I think Henderson at left tackle, because there's no other obvious candidate, fellas. You could throw Carson Barnhart over there and say, okay, let's see what we can do. I think he's almost a little bit of a stretch at right tackle sometimes, frankly. He did a great job there last year, but I think he's better suited for the interior. And if he plays in the NFL, that's where he's going to play. So to me, Henderson, I don't know that Jeff Percy's strong enough yet there. So I don't know that there are obvious candidates other than him. So to me, that's the big one. That's the one that really has to work out.
Yeah, I think it speaks a lot about the quality of the guys that they brought in, is that I'm going in a completely different direction here. I think that Josiah Stewart on the defensive line is a guy that's going to be, a big time playmaker for them. I think he brings something different to that pass rush rotation. A little more of a speedier and a bendier guy. And then Ernest Hausmann as well at linebacker is someone that, we know that Junior Colson and Michael Barrett are going to kind of hold the fort down at linebacker, but this guy's coming on strong, and he's going to be someone I'm really interested to track where he's at in fall camp. The thing with him is that, he was a true freshman at Nebraska last year. He kind of, by necessity, has to drink from the fire hose in terms of his development because that Nebraska team was so bad. So, there's a little bit of an asterisk into saying, oh, well, he's a former starter joining the team. I think that Michigan would be willing to kind of cool the jets on him a little bit because this is a long-term piece. He's only going to be a true sophomore this year, but I feel like sooner rather than later, you saw it in the spring game with how athletic he is, how disruptive he is. This defense needs more disruptors. They were quality from top to bottom last year, but they need guys to be a little more, I'll stop short of saying game breakers, but you need guys to pop a little more when it comes to athleticism and getting guys in the backfield and things like that. I think Ernest Hausmann is, by the end of this year, would I be surprised if he supplanted, Michael Barrett? I would not at all. And I think that he's going to be a guy, at least over these next 2 years, that's going to emerge as one of the better players on this Michigan defense.
In the 2 games that I've seen him live, always around the ball, guys. This Michigan spring game and then the Michigan game against Nebraska at Michigan Stadium, always around the ball. He's got a nose for it, and clearly he's got the body for the position.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Ernest Hausmann could start by the end of the year. He may start the first game. I think Michael Barrett will play a lot as well. I think all three of those guys will. And Junior Colson will probably benefit from not having to play every snap. He said this spring that he was exhausted at times last year with the lack of depth that Michigan had at linebacker. He was also playing banged up. Another one of those guys that had an injury that you didn't necessarily know about, or a couple of them throughout last season. So I think he's going to be huge. He's going to play a big impact. But I do stick with that offensive line just because of how important a position it is. I'm still kind of between Ladarius Henderson and Drake Nugent. My hesitation with Henderson, and I think Carson Barnhart could play there. I think Miles Hinton could probably move over to the left side and play there if you had to, is just that he is more of a guard too, just like Carson Barnhart. Those are the majority of snaps in his career have been played there. Now, I think he's going to slide in and fit really nicely, and I think he'll be a really good piece. So I am torn as well between him and Drake Nugent, who I think talking to some of these guys this summer as we've gone around to different camps and on the team trip over in Ohio, people talking about, Drake Nugent wasn't able to practice, but him in the weight room was really impressive. Miles Hinton said he was easily the most energetic and guy that was the most into it in the weight room at Stanford, and I think that's going to carry over here, and already has, based on what guys like Kenneth Grant, who was in his lifting group, have said. So I think Drake Nugent's going to fit in nicely. I think Ladarius Henderson will fit in nicely. Torn between the two. Right now, I'm kind of leading Nugent, but we'll see. And we'll learn more about Henderson as camp comes on. We'll learn more about Nugent, too, because he didn't get to practice fully either with the team. But plenty of candidates to choose from. And then a dark horse would be James Turner, too. I mean, not as the number one, but at the kicker spot, if he wins that battle, he could have the fate of some games in his hands, and that it could come down to him
on his foot.
Yeah, that's true, on his foot.
And I do want to make it clear that Michigan did recruit Henderson to play the left tackle spot, so that was their plan for them. They think that he can definitely do it. But I'm with you, Clay. At the next level, he too is going to be a guard. So, but he has played left tackle, and I think he played there in high school, and I think he played there some at Arizona State as well. Another guy, there's a captain, man. These guys, all these captains are bringing in from other schools. I love that.
Yeah,
it's captains and the fact that all of these guys are going to factor into the two deep in some shape or form. A lot of times you have to hit the portal to maybe backfill or add a body, even a Josh Wallace. We felt like they have the goods to have two starting caliber corners there, but Josh Wallace is about as good of a depth piece as you could bring in. He's a guy that's going to compete for one of those jobs. So it's they've absolutely nailed the portal this offseason. It's been really impressive to see.
No doubt. And a bunch of hungry guys too. Yeah. Ladarius Henderson played left tackle as a freshman, moved over, played a little right guard, right tackle as a sophomore, and then his last two seasons all left guard. But so that's going to be a transition for him there. But he's done it in the past, and Michigan obviously evaluated that, and I think they wanted to get that done really quickly too. When the portal opened, he was a commit within days, so before the bowl game even.